Peter Zeihan is a world-renowned geopolitical expert, author, consultant, and commentator. His book, The End of the World is Just Beginning, is an international bestseller. He was recently asked if the Trump tariff policies will be the cause of the impending global depression. The surprising answer? No. The tariffs are just accelerating the timeline. According to Zion, demographics and deglobalization are the two forces driving the pending collapse, not the tariffs. He insists that a collapse has been baked into the system since the world urbanized and industrialized nearly a century ago, and that Trump's tariffs have brought this crisis forward by destroying what little fabric holds these systems together. Zion says there was once a world in which America's exposure could have been mitigated through strategic partnerships and building out domestic capacity. Today, these policies isolate the U.S., stifle North American industry, and make it harder for the U.S. to weather this storm. According to him, the issue revolves around two big things that are shaping what's going on in the world right now, and Trump is not one of them. The first one is the demographic inversion that has been working towards us for a century at this point. When you industrialize and urbanize and move from the farm into the city, you have fewer kids. Most countries were looking at 6 to 8 children per woman back in the turn of the 1900s. And now, in most of the world, we're well below replacement levels. In places like China or Germany or Japan, we've been looking at levels below replacement levels for a couple of generations already. Zion insists we were always going to hit a demographic tipping point sometime between 2025 and 2035. He says this was always a decade where the model was going to break. We were going to run out of consumers, we were going to run out of producers, we were going to run out of people who could provide capital and be left with a lot of old people who can't work and absorb capital and don't consume very much. The second major issue is globalization. Zion says we were always going to hit a point where the United States couldn't sustain the network anymore. In the world before World War II, countries didn't trade goods. We shot at each other, and we fought over access to consumer markets and raw materials, and we fought over maritime trade routes and all the rest. When the Americans rejigged the world through the Bretton Woods at the end of World War II, they told everyone they would guarantee security for everyone's commerce if allowed to dictate security policies. Basically, the Americans got control of the world by indirectly subsidizing everybody, and that included keeping our markets open. Now, the rest of the world has gotten too rich for the US to continue to inadvertently subsidize, and we've reached a point where there are so many secondary naval powers that the US simply can't guarantee freedom of the seas any longer. So, this 10-year period, starting in 2025, was always going to be when it all broke down. We were always going to have global dislocation. We were always going to have deglobalization. Zion says that what Trump is doing is simply speeding things up. He's breaking down the economic case for having industrial plants outside of the United States without simultaneously building up the industrial plant to replace that loss within the United States. Trump is not causing a global catastrophe. It's more like he's accelerating something that was already well past the point of no return. So far in this administration, we've seen policies that are penalizing trade within the region of Kuzma, which is actually encouraging places like China to build more industrial plants in order to take advantage of it. Right now, if you want to build a car in North America, the parts go back and forth across the borders among the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And that means if you have tariffs on more than one step in the car's production compared to cars produced exclusively in, say, Europe, then this is an economic precarity that's not going to be Trump's fault. However, Trump is taking steps to make the disruption happen sooner than it otherwise might have. Much like the Smoot-Hawley tariffs back in 1930, his current policy is making things worse than they need to be. Few people seem to be noticing. Speaking for myself, I'm concerned that so few investors and advisors seem worried about how all of this is playing out. According to Zion, the economic hardship will be severe and prolonged. He's not alone. People like Nouriel Roubini have long expressed similar views. Despite this, many of us seem to be unperturbed by the demographic and geopolitical train wreck that is happening in slow motion. The old saw about the frog in the pot of boiling water seems apt. I'm doing all I can to ask people to consider moving to more resilient portfolios, less reliant on publicly traded securities. Is anybody listening?